of the work of the medicinal garden, aside from maintaining these plants, is actually learning to use the plants to make medicine. And it starts today, and we're so excited. We're just thrilled. And we have for you a very special speaker, and who will also demonstrate the use of the plants in making medicine. I hope you all have something to write on, notebooks, and we gave out pages with recipes on them. If you didn't get one, you can get one on the way out. But our speaker is Lanier Cordell. She's a native of Louisiana. She grew up in Metairie and has lived in, I have to read this because it's so long. She has lived in Nashville, Tennessee, Bennington, Vermont, Troy, New York, Westchester County, New York, and Baton Rouge. Any place else?
No, but, well, Los Angeles.
Just Los Angeles. Both of her parents grew up in rural Louisiana, and her maternal grandmother canned almost all of the food that she grew and ate. Lanier is a Louisiana Master Gardener, a member of the Herb Society of America, and a past chairman of the Baton Rouge unit, and a member of the American Botanical Council. Lanier is an accredited public relations professional and has worked in marketing, public relations, and advertising for more than 25 years. She's also a writer for print, film, and television. Lanier's very accomplished, in case you haven't noticed. She has had featured articles in numerous national publications and is a published author. Her book, Economics, The Secret of Making Money with Your Horse Business, has been a top seller on Amazon.com for several years. She now lives on a 32-acre horse farm and maintains a traditional potager. Is that how you pronounce it? Potager. Okay. She's an avid cook and a medicinal herb enthusiast who has studied medicinal herbs for over 2 decades. She makes almost all of the medicines her family uses, and is presently working on a book about Louisiana healing traditions. Did you hear that last sentence? She makes almost all of her medicines. We can do that too. So now, without further ado, I give you Lanier Cordell.
Thank you. I grew up in New Orleans. I worked in New York City, so I talk very fast. And we have a little bit of time and a lot to cover. This is going to be a general overview. I'm hoping to pique your curiosity and get you going. But don't worry about keeping up with me, because anyone who wants a copy of my PowerPoint, send me an email and I will be happy to share it with you. My email address is lanierc, L-A-N-I-E-R-C, as in cat, at att.net. att.net. Lanier C, L-A-N-I-E-R-C. I don't know what happened to the mic. Lanier C at att.net. How to use medicinal plants. This is an introduction. And it's a very highly technical thing, so I must give you warnings first, because, you know, we have litigation issues. It's not intended to diagnose, treat any illness. It's information purposes only. You can have allergic reactions to anything. Be cautious. Know what allergic reactions are. And anytime you use any component that's new to you, be cautious. Do not attempt to diagnose the illnesses of others, and oh God, let me tell you, that is a temptation that's hard to resist. I particularly like treating doctors. Go fast this way. And of course, more cautions. If fever, coughing, soreness, or other problems last more than a few days or become worse, seek immediate medical attention. Sometimes modern medicine can be quite useful. If you're taking prescription medications, check with your pharmacist and physician for possible interactions. Even vinegar can cause reactions. And more is not always better. More is not always better. And sometimes with herbal medicine, less is better. And yet more cautions, always check with 3 trusted sources. Always check with 3 trusted sources before using any herbal remedy. Do not trust your memory, and especially the older you get. Always check with trusted sources, people that are practicing herbalists. You'd be amazed how many herbal medicine books are out there written by people who are not practicing herbalists. They are just people who are hired by publishing companies to compile a list. These are people that I trust quite a lot. What's really sad is how many of these people have reached retirement age or are now deceased. But we have new young herbalists coming up, and it's very exciting to see the growing interest in herbalism. There are also a lot of herbal conferences, herbal medicinal herb conferences that are worth attending. And they happen throughout the country. I went to one in Costa Rica this May, or March. It was a wonderful excuse to go to Costa Rica. All right. As you can see, herbal medicine is not new. Hippocrates says, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. The other is an assumed quote from Adam and Eve. To Adam, here, Adam, have a bite of apple, man, it's an eye opener. And I mean, it's not a new concept. 2,400 years ago, Hippocrates knew that not only was food meant to fill our bellies, but it could also prevent disease and encourage health. Hippocrates may get all the credit, but the understanding of the relationship between food and health goes back farther than recorded history. What has changed is our concept of medicine. All right, the shamans, Satura, medicine men and women, every civilization has had people whose specific purpose was to provide medicines and cures and treat the sick. And despite popular belief, many of the concoctions they used were very effective, particularly when used in early stages of illness. Modern science is now confirming the effectiveness of plant remedies. In my really sweet introduction, they talked about being a member of the American Botanical Council. This is a sample of the kind of information you can get from the American Botanical Council. They are all about the supplement industry and the herbal industry. They do a tremendous amount of scientific research on various things, and this is just one publication on elderberries, the use of elderberries. And you are more than welcome afterwards to come up and look at it. But it gives you an idea. Now, as you can see, making medicine is extremely complex and requires materials that you are completely unfamiliar with, such as the pot, the strainer, the bowl, the spoon, the scale, the measuring cup, the double boiler, and the most critical thing in herbal medicine making, the label. You laugh, but trust me. When you walk in one day and you see this oil and you go, what the heck was that one? You'll know. All right. So, antiseptic. This is just a sample of the back of what your antiseptic medicines are. Garlic, a great antiviral, antibacterial. If you have a cut, you can take and break open a toe of garlic and rub it on. It will help to fight infection. Raw honey, thyme, fresh thyme is best. Rosemary, extremely good. Ginger, oregano, onion, apple cider vinegar. All of those are known to be antibiotic, antibacterial properties, antibacterial, antiviral properties. Now, do you know something strange about this column right here? What do we put garlic, rosemary, and thyme on? Meat. What does garlic, rosemary, and thyme do? kill bacteria. Maybe that's how people didn't manage to not kill themselves with food poisoning way back when. Hey, relievers, cayenne pepper. I gave you a cayenne pepper salve. Word of warning, it is the napalm of medicinal herbs. Use a plastic glove or plastic bag when applying. Otherwise, it's worse than crab oil. And everyone in this audience has had the experience of touching an eye or other sensitive place with crab oil on their hands. Be careful. Apple cider vinegar can relieve pain. Cloves applied to the tooth can relieve toothaches. Turmeric, chronic pain, great in salve combined with cayenne. Tomato juice can help with leg cramps. You drink it. Why? Potassium. Oats. Got menstrual cramps? Eat a bowl of oatmeal. Peppermint. Got a sore spot? Go grab a bunch of peppermint out of your garden. Put it in a nice tub of hot water. Sip. Coughs, colds, and flu. Bay leaf. Anybody know what bay leaf is in this town? Thyme. Onion. Honey. I gave you 2 recipes for cough syrups. My husband swears that the recipe that has apple cider vinegar and honey and garlic and cayenne is absolutely the most ungodly tasting stuff on earth. But he will take it because it will knock the cough off in 2 days. So, just so you know. All right, let's go to the next one. And I'm sure none of you have this stuff in your house. So you're going to have to go out and spend a fortune buying more stuff. All right, let's go to the next slide, Mary. All right, for your memory, I should have brought this. I usually do this at every talk, is I bring rosemary. If you sniff rosemary, your memory improves. Tests have shown this. So when you take tests, take a piece of rosemary and keep breathing it in, and it will stimulate your memory. This is one of my favorite. I love this stuff. I use it for a long time. Thyme is another one that helps with memory. Rosemary, thyme, marjoram, horseradish. That would surprise me. Gotu kola, you can grow here. In fact, anybody who wants gotu kola, come by my house. I'll give you some. Ginkgo biloba is a tree that can grow here. Finding one is difficult, but they do grow here. And of course, indigestion, diarrhea, any kind of stomach complaints, digestive complaints, ginger, anise, fennel, cinnamon, cloves, onion, and apple cider vinegar. Anxiety and insomnia. And I know no one in this crowd has problems staying asleep at night. Chamomile, red clover, fenugreek seeds, honey, aniseed, cumin, and there are a bunch of others. In fact, they have one that grows here, and they have it in the garden called lemon balm. Anybody familiar with lemon balm, aka Melissa? This little jewel, make yourself a cup of tea. Hard to be upset with people when you drink lemon balm tea. Or you can just use it as an excuse to get away from those people. I'm sorry, I have to go get some lemon balm. Let's go to the next one. Now, these are the natives. You don't have to write this down. Vermilion Bell has already put together a lovely little booklet on the native herbs. But I wanted you to see there's a French pronunciation in English and the Latin. Why the Latin, do you say? Because trying to find out what Manglier was, this is the first one I learned about, was Manglier, from a young woman in Opelousas whose family still uses this exclusively for treating coughs, chest cough. They call it Manglier. I said, how do you spell it? And she goes, I don't know, it's Cajun. We never write anything down. So, fortunately, I took French and remembered none of it. So I had to figure out the spelling, and then I started doing research. It's also called saltbush, consumption plant, etc. So how do you find information on Manglier and know what the heck you're talking about? You have to know the Latin name. And is it up there? The second one, Baccharis columnifolia. So let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to memorize the Latin, just write it down somewhere. Get the English, and then you'll be fine. All right, let's go to the next one, please. All right, elderberry, San Lucas. I wanted to talk about elderberry because it has been said by many ancient herbalists that if you had one herb, it should be elderberry. This stuff grows beautifully in our anti-soil, as I refer to it, and it is extremely productive. It is fruit-bearing. I tell you this because I'm going to give you a little secret. Unless you really like climbing, keep the bush this height so you can reach everything on it. This plant, the flowers are useful. Not only is it good for reducing fever, you can make some really yummy, yummy stuff with the flowers. I should have brought it, but we'll save that for an elderberry class. The other thing, the berries. I love this little sad cluster because you see the green ones? Don't eat the green ones. What's interesting is the birds will eat the green ones and not the black ones. Very strange. They go to a ruby red and then they get very dark. The dark ones are the ones you want. When you go to harvest them to make your tincture or syrup, you just pull them. And you will be pulling a lot of them. Do not do this in your living room or sitting on a sofa. You will end up with everything purple because it stains. I know this because my husband decided to do this while sitting on the sofa. He also left a bag of these sitting on an antique wooden bench that's now got permanent elderberry stain. Well, what are you going to do? So, very useful plant. Leaves are also useful. The bark on this plant is useful. And this tells you what you can use them for. I've heard people say that the blackberries are toxic. I've heard foragers say that you can eat the blackberries if you're hungry for food. Do your own research. Form your own opinion. That's all I can tell you. And in the words of foragers, eat a little bit. If you don't get sick, eat a little bit more. All right. These are the ones I broke it down just by what you can use for different things. You notice elderberry shows up in headaches, coughs and congestion, joint and muscle pain. Elderberry leaves, flowers are antiseptic in nature, colds and flu. My husband's been taking elderberry syrup for 6 years. He has not had a cold or the flu in 6 years. His coworkers get sick, he gets nothing. His friends who take flu shots get sick, he gets nothing. My daughter and son, who do not listen to me, get sick, then they take the elderberry and they get better faster than anybody else does. So, whatever. Yellow dock. Yellow dock is a fascinating little plant. This is a very small one. I'll pass it around for you to look at. See this little taproot? Got acne? Got kids with acne? You can take this root, grate it while it's raw, because once it dries, you're not doing anything with any root. Make a tea with it, make a tincture with it. This will clear up acne. Does a very good job. It's also shown to be useful in eczema and psoriasis. The leaves are also extremely useful. Oh, it's also a liver tonic. But the leaves, you want to know this plant. You want to know this plant very well, especially if you live in this area. You get a bee sting, wasp sting, or fire ant bite. You take the leaf, you crush it, or you chew it, put the sac onto the sting. It'll take the sting out, stop swelling, and you will not get the pustules from fire ant bites. What's that called? It's called yellow dock, curly dock, or just plain dock. And the crispus is I can't even think of it right now, the scientific name for it. But it grows in abundance here. This is a very small plant. You will see it with leaves this long. The tender young leaves can be eaten in salads or cooked. It's very nutritious. In fact, Daryl Martin, who owns Blue Boy Herbs in Mississippi, when they first moved onto their property, they basically lived on the leaves of yellow dot plants while they put their garden in. And I like a little more variety in my diet, but you know. It also sends up a shoot of seeds that looks like grain, like a cluster of grain. So it's a very interesting plant. Get to know this baby. I have a 6-year-old, my grandson is now 11. When he was 6, he came running across the yard screaming, "Where's the yellow dot? Where's some yellow dot? I need some yellow dot," because he'd gotten stuck. So you can teach him young to recognize these plants, and they're wonderful friends. All righty. Poke root. We all know poke root exists. It's also called poke salad. It is a plant that can be eaten, but you have to boil it, throw the water away, boil it, throw the water away. Third time, cook it, and you can eat it. Highly nutritional. But it has, I forgot what the darn chemical is in there that's such a problem. But pokeweed is another one. You can rub on bites that works really well. Wounds, elderberry, bittermelon, lizard's tail, and hang on, I have some lizard's tail. This is lizard's tail. Grows very well down here. This is one that was used. This is lizard's tail, isn't it? No, yeah? It's got bigger leaves. I think this is it. I'm sorry, yes. I'm not familiar with lizard tail. Can you tell? So you always have somebody around who really knows what they're talking about, because you can have an accident if you're not careful. All righty. Let's go to the next one. All right. Why bother making herbal medicines? It's cheaper. You won't believe how much money. We take no prescription medications. It's easy and fun. It often works better with fewer side effects. I will tell you a story about my husband. My husband has a master's in physical chemistry, so naturally he blew himself up last spring putting gasoline on the fire. What can I tell you? For the second time. So we go to the emergency room because I don't know what we're dealing with, and he's got his entire face, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. He looked like Christopher Walken in some movie where he blew up a science lab. Smoke coming off his hair. His ear was black. He was burned from here to here on this arm, all the way around from here to here on this arm. So we go to the emergency room, and we spend the night in the emergency room, and then the next day we go to the burn clinic, and they put him all this stuff, and we get home, and I say, okay, excuse me, ma'am. I go in my laundry room. I come back out, and I say, okay, you're going to use this too. So he goes to the doctor for follow-ups. His 8th final visit, it's a different doctor. The doctor walks in, and he looks at his arms, and he goes, what did you do? And he said, well, I did everything you told me to do, and then my wife made up some herbal stuff that I put on there. And the doctor says, this looks better than the skin burn. He said, I've never seen a burn like this heal this well. And he has virtually no scarring. You can't tell he has been burned. It's just a little discoloration. And I thought, why did the doctor say, does your wife have proof that any of this works? Where's the scientific data on this? Because I'm thinking, if this works better than anything you've seen in the past, then maybe you should investigate it, because it might help somebody else. But of course, it's an isolated incident, and it's only anecdotal data. Anyway, okay, you don't have to go to the store in the middle of the night or in bad weather. Your husband's coughing and keeping you up all night. You go in the kitchen, you get your blender out, you throw in your stems, small stems. Decoctions are made with the sturdier parts, which would be bark, larger stems, roots. You want to let them simmer. In fact, the longer you let them simmer, the better. Say you're making a tea with Montpellier for a cold, and you put some Mamou in there, because they're both good for congestion. So I'll put a little of this, a little of that. You put it together. You can put it in your slow cooker, and you can put it on 8 hours. Let it simmer. Check it to make sure the water level is where you want it to be. At the end of that time, you strain it off. You can drink it. If you are trying to take care of a cold or a long illness, something that's not going to be, it's not just, I'm feeling stressed, I want a cup of tea. You want to make a fairly nice batch that will last several days. So if you're making a decoction, you want to make it a little bit more. Here's a warning. This is mistake number 2 of beginning herbal medicine makers. Mistake number 1 is not to label properly. Mistake number 2 is making too much. Because you think, oh wow, this only makes 8 ounces of cough syrup. That's not going to be enough. Trust me, it will be enough. Always cover herbs while steaming or simmering to prevent the loss of the oils. It is the oils in this plant that contain, it's how in perfume making they talk about the oils, the botanical oils in the flowers. You have the same thing in the plant, in parts of the plant. So you don't want that to boil away in the steam. You don't want the medicaments to go away in the steam. So you want to keep it covered, and you want to keep it covered with water so you don't dry out, overcook, whatever. Any questions about teas, infusions, decoctions? Yes? Yes. The question is, does it matter what kind of pot you use? I highly recommend 2 kinds of pots. Stainless steel, no non-stick coating. It's a personal peeve of mine. I've never seen a non-stick coating that did not come off in cooking over time. I don't think I want those chemicals, especially not my medicines. So they call it a non-reactive. Aluminum is reactive. Stainless steel is not reactive. The other thing that's not reactive is enamel-coated pots. The old-fashioned enamel pots. You can also use glass, but glass is just so impractical. But I'll mention you can use it. But stainless steel is your best bet. Stainless steel is less likely to use color, but aluminum also, it reacts with the herbs, and you don't want that. Any other questions? All right, let's go to the next one. And we're going to talk about oxymels. Oxymels, you do the same thing as you do with tinctures, but you use vinegar. I use organic apple cider vinegar, and I buy the Bragg's or any that has this stuff floating around it. It's called the Mother. You can actually, once you buy 1 bottle, you can make your own apple cider vinegar and save yourself a ton of money.
Do you have a preference? Because Hunt's just came out like a year ago with one that claims to have mothers, but it's Hunt.
Hunt, that's it.
You know?
That's it. I've been using Bragg's
like
for a gazillion years. I have nothing but good things to say about Bragg's. It is a personal choice. If you decide that you really prefer the taste of red wine vinegar, more power to you, please use red wine vinegar. I would look for organic because you are making this because you're concerned about your health. Look for organic red wine vinegar. If you're going to use white vinegar because you just have a passion for white vinegar, make sure it is made from non-GMO rice and that it's organic. I mean, but I love apple cider vinegar.
I have high blood pressure, and since for like the last 10 years I was taking blood pressure medicine, and I had read an article about apple cider vinegar, drinking it in 8 ounces of water, and I put honey in it because it's disgusting. But I drink that every day, And over a span of 6 months, I was able to get off of my blood pressure medicine.
I will tell you another thing, mung beans.
Mung beans?
Mung beans, M-U-N-G, mung beans. I have a Chinese acupuncturist that I go to who is from China, trained in China. In the U.S., the training for an acupuncturist is 3 years. In China, it's 7 years. Plus, acupuncture has been part of the culture of China for thousands of years. So naturally, Americans come along and they decide they're going to have an American version of acupuncture. They're going to improve the Chinese version.
Oh.
Well, anyway, my mother had uncontrollable high blood pressure. He said, go to the Whole Food Market, buy mung beans, boil them. I'll have to send you the formula for it, but boil them. He says, until all the beans sink to the bottom. When they're all sink, take them off the heat, and you simmer. You don't really heavy boil, but you just simmer. Strain the beans out, drink half a cup of water every day. My mother's blood pressure normalized within 3 weeks. I had friends who got off. I don't recommend you get off blood pressure medication at all.
I'm just saying it works for me.
If you are with a doctor and if your doctor is supervising you and you want to slowly wean yourself off, work with your doctor on that. But I can tell you that I have friends who that's all they do. And then you end up with these mung beans. And so you have to make soup. And my mother has given mung beans to every one of her neighbors. They've all had a very fiber-rich mung bean diet since she got on to the mung bean water. But it is doable. Poultices. Anyone not know what a poultice is? Everybody, a poultice is basically a concoction that you put on either a piece of flannel or you can just put directly on your chest. Would be a poultice for a cold. If you have a sore that's infected and swollen, you may want to put a poultice on there that will draw out the infection and the swelling and reduce the heat. Those are typical uses for poultices. If you have a sprain and you want to reduce the swelling, you would use a poultice. And you can put it, you can soak a flannel in your concoction. The other thing that I did not bring that is an extremely valuable tool, all joking aside, very valuable if you're going to make your own medicines, is a good blender. I mean, a really good blender. I use a Vitamix because it's like, you know, I figure one day if I ever get tired of using this blender, I can use it as a motor for a boat. But grinding, a mortar and pestle, which is another thing I just realized I didn't bring with me. They also have a molcajete. The molcajete looks just like a mortar and pestle, but it's made from lava rock, so it's rougher. And it makes grinding so much easier. And guess what? They have them at World Market. So I'm sure everybody's going to rush out of here and go to World Market to get the molcajete. It's molcajete, M-O-L-C-A-J-E-T-E. It's in the kitchen section at World Market. I know because I was there the other day and saw it. I was like, oh, wow, I think I need one. And it has little eggs that it sits on, and it's about this big, and it's gray, and it's rough inside. And you'll see how it can help in macerating down those herbs and mixing them. And you can mix it in vinegar, witch hazel, whatever you're using, because witch hazel does help reduce swelling. So say you have a sprained ankle. You want to use Arnica montana would be my choice. And I'm sure there's a local herb that I don't know enough about, so I'm sharing my ignorance with you. But I would use some Arnica montana oil or tincture mixed in because Arnica will reduce swelling and bruising like nothing you've ever seen before. My daughter, my favorite Arnica story, my daughter's friend decided after a year after her husband died that she needed liposuction. So she gets liposuction and she is so badly bruised and swollen, the doctor says, just go home, put your feet up and don't do anything. And I said, he's scared, blood clots. And so I said, did he mention anything about Arnica montana? And she said, no. Now she's a physical therapist. I said, let me introduce you to Arnica. You will become very good friends. So I went home and I mixed up a little arnica and a little calendula, because calendula also helps. But predominantly, it was 2/3 arnica oil. She started rubbing it on. Within 4 hours, you could see a difference in the swelling. Within 8 hours, the swelling was down by 50%. Within 24 hours, it was down by 75%. And the bruises went from purple to green in that same time period. What arnica does, my understanding, one of the actions of arnica is that it helps the body reabsorb blood that has gone beyond the veins. But it does reduce swelling. So if you have a sprained ankle, I would put some, I was a native teacher, so I had some arnica around. Is it lizard's tail? Isn't that one of the functions of lizard's tail? Oh, I did remember something. But lizard's tail also helps with bruising and swelling. So you would take some lizard's tail, which looks like this. I have to undo it. But the lizard's tail is right here. I would take these fresh leaves, I would put them in my molcajete or my pedestal or my Vitamix. With Vitamix, you have to be careful with any blender. You don't want it to get hot. You don't want the mixture to get hot. So you want to use it low speed and just macerate it real well. I would mix this in the molcajete. If I had some arnica oil, because you can't grow arnica down here, I'd mix it in with it to make a paste. And then I would either put that paste on a piece of flannel that you buy at the store or muslin. And you get unbleached muslin at the fabric store. You can take and cut a piece of that and put it on that area that's swollen, and then put an ace bandage or vet wrap around it and let it hold it in place. Just loosely wrap it to hold it in place, and you have a poultice. Anything else you want to know about poultices? Yes? I didn't hear you. For an inflammation that is chronic, that you've had for a long time, you could certainly try it. Depending on what it is, if you say it's inflammation, some of the things that would help with inflammation, doesn't mahu help with inflammation? Lizard's tail, I knew it was one of them, but lizard's tail will help with inflammation. What I would experiment with, if it was my body, depending on where it is, I would make up a solution with some arnica, some lizard's tail, and depending on if it was, is it painful, the inflammation? Okay, well, I would add turmeric and cayenne because both of them are good with inflammation. I would also consider taking turmeric internally. I have turmeric in a salt shaker with big holes in it on my kitchen table, and every morning I put a quarter to half teaspoon on everything I eat all the time, because turmeric is also known to prevent tumor growth and to retard tumor growth. I learned this from somebody who had a Great Dane who had tumors, cancerous tumors, and she started feeding him turmeric, and those tumors reduced in size. So, but turmeric is also an anti-inflammatory. I would look at turmeric and ginger, consuming turmeric and ginger internally, because they do help with inflammation. I would also, if it was me and I had a chronic inflammation problem, I'd go see my acupuncturist, and he would fix it.
When you use ginger, how would you prepare it to put it in the solution?
If I were going to take it internally?
Yes.
Okay, if I'm going to take ginger internally, I freeze my ginger because it lasts longer if you freeze it, the whole thing. I don't peel it because I buy organic ginger. And then I just throw it in the blender or the food processor and let it chop it up. And because I'm lazy and I don't want to get my knuckles bruised on the darn grater, so I just throw it in the food processor. I chop it a little bit because it's frozen, you know, I just whack it around and then throw it in there. Yes?
It's all ginger, or there's only certain kinds?
I was told by Rosemary Gladstar that all varieties of a medicinal plant have some medicinal properties, but the one that is called the officinalis, you'll see that in the Latin name. If it says officinalis behind it, That is the one that most herbalists have used throughout history to make medicine with. Does that mean you can't use the pink yarrow flowers in addition to the white yarrow flowers? No, because I've found very little difference. But basically, if it says officinalis behind it, herbalists have used it and it's been proven over thousands of years, so I can trust the thousands of years. All right, fats. Herbs can be added to a small pan and used to soak various body parts, or added to a tub of hot water, or you can make a decoction, strain out the herbs, and add a decoction to bath water. Not too hot, please. You are not a Tibetan. So, if you have a baby who's fussy, you can take and make a decoction of lavender. Everybody grow lavender here? Do you know one of the secrets to growing lavender in this humid climate? You make your soil, like grow with a pot, half soil, half pebbles, gravel, mix it together so it gets good drainage, because it doesn't like to be wet. And then you ignore it. Oh, excuse me. The other thing you do is you put white marble chips on the top so that it reflects the heat into the plant and dries the humidity. And it will last a lot longer. But those flowers from that lavender plant you want to harvest. And then you have a fussy baby. You make a decoction. Everybody know how to make a decoction? You simmer the flowers for about 15 minutes because they're flowers. You don't want to overpower them. You don't want to let it go like you would roots. So you pour that in a little pan, and you sit the baby in the pan, and you'll be surprised how calm that baby will become. And it will smell good too. And if you can use it for you. If you're stressed out, make a little decoction of lavender flowers, pour it in your bathtub, and rest. You can use the leaves, but most of the potency comes from the flowers themselves. So I use every part of the plant. I hate to waste, and so when I'm pruning lavender, I have this disease. I cannot walk past a rosemary or lavender plant without grabbing hold of it and running my hands along it and then just smelling it. Because those two herbs, it's obviously because I have a horrid memory, so I use the rosemary. And the lavender just makes me feel good. Lavender and mint are two herbs that are very interesting because they have a dual action. If you're tired and you take mint, it will pep you up. If you're stressed and you need to relax, it will chill you out. Same thing with lavender. All right, next one, please. Capsules. How many of you are going out and buying, I don't know, cinnamon capsules to help with your blood sugar, or cayenne pepper capsules to help with arthritis pain? All right, for $19.95, shipping included with Amazon Prime, you can purchase a capsule making kit. There are two sizes, a large, like horse kind of pill, and then the smaller one. And I recommend you get the little kit because you don't want to be sitting there doing this with this little capsule. With the kit, you got holes, and you put a capsule, half a capsule in each hole, and you pour the herbs over the whole thing, shake it to make sure they're full, and then you put the tops on all the capsules. Much more practical. So get the machine, you'll be happier, and you won't curse me. And believe me, the quality of your herb capsules will be better than a lot of the ones out on the market, and they will cost you less because you're going to have high quality herbs and you're going to have 100% high quality herbs, not sawdust, to add to it. So, is it worth it to do? I think it's very worth it to do. Next one, please.
But be careful if you do turmeric because you will stain everything.
Oh, turmeric, I really don't see the need to. I believe that you should always make your herb medicine part of your diet. You can make elderberry jam. What do you want to do? You want to take a tablespoon of elderberry syrup a day, or do you want to put on toast? Why not? Do it on toast.
What about the heat, though, affecting its potency?
And the way you process elderberry syrup you do it with heat, so it's not as big an issue. You don't use high heat on any of it. With the jelly, you don't get as solid a jelly as you do. I've made elderberry pie. Talk about being easy to get people to take elderberry. Of course, if they're nauseous from the flu, they don't want pie, but, you know,
Pie is always the answer.
Pie is always the answer. Dessert is always the answer. I just made a icing with elderberry syrup the other day that was just really good. But elder flowers, oh dear God, I make elderflower cordial, which is basically elderflower syrup. It's a simple syrup flavored with elderflower. It makes the best lemonade on God's earth because you use it instead of sugar, you use the elderflower simple syrup. Then I made a cake, a little plain pound cake, and it's kind of boring. So I doused it with elderflower syrup. And then I made a pavlova, you know, which is the meringue. And so instead of a cream filling, I made an elderflower cream filling. And then I put some elderflower in the and lemon in the whipped cream. And I threw in some elderflower Saint Germain, which is elderflower liqueur. I threw some of that. Oh, it was fabulous. But yeah, so you can get these things really quite good. But I really believe that rather than take a capsule of turmeric, that if you take and put a quarter teaspoon on this dish and a quarter teaspoon on that dish, it's less likely to irritate your stomach because turmeric can irritate your stomach. My little friend from India says, be careful, we are used to it, you are not. It will irritate your stomach, so I put it on food. Yes?
When you talk about cinnamon,
Yes.
is there a certain cinnamon you use for your capsules?
I don't personally use cinnamon in that capacity. But if I were going to use it, I would do my research and find out which one has the densest cinnamon oils, the most potent. The Saigon cinnamons are good, but I would look to make sure exactly, look at the scientific name of what the research has been done on, and that's where I would go. Follow the research, follow the research, follow the research. But I have also been known to, I have an herbal, which is a collection of what herbs are in use. I think it's from the 1500s and it's in French. And I found it on Google Books. And I've been fascinated by this little book. But I like to look at what herbalists were using 200 years ago. And then I like to look at the research because it's amazing. Because you'll go, well, duh, these people obviously knew. And I really find it interesting because most people tend to think that we gained our herbal knowledge by somebody just walking, being the first to go, I wonder if that works. Let me try that and see what it works for. I don't believe that's what happened. I think that there is a knowledge that is born in us, and I'll tell you why. I was doing a lot of reading on herbalism for horses, because we have a lot of horses, and it's much cheaper to do herbals than it is to do the other stuff. So in my research, I found that you can give a horse an herb if it has a certain problem. For one thing, let's say parasites. Horses in the wild, if they have parasites, will find an herb in the wild and eat it. If they're in captivity and you want to give them an herb for parasites, they will eat that herb right up until they don't need it anymore. Then they won't touch it. They absolutely will not touch it. So if a horse is programmed to do that, I believe that there is something in us, because cellularly plants are very closely related to humans. I do believe that there is some kind of innate knowledge that draws us to certain plants. I'm just, in watching animals, if you know that dogs, canines in the wild, wolves, also will go and eat a particular plant if they have a particular type of parasite. Wolves don't have heartworms. They don't have the problems from heartworms that domesticated dogs do. Could that be because ours are limited and not able to go out and find what they need? So something tells me if animals are capable of, without having any instruction, finding what they need, then humans have to have that ability, or had that ability, and we just civilized it out.
Giving the horses herbs, I would worry about colic.
It depends on what the herbs are. I mean,
Okay.
look, that's a whole other subject.
Yeah,
It's
but
horses
is your
and
book that
herbs.
you wrote?
My book that I wrote is
It's
not about
not-
that. It's about making money with the horse business. But yeah, well, that's the next one. That's after this one. But does anyone have any other questions? Is everybody excited about going home and starting this?
That's maybe a family, like a lemon balm,
A lemon balm hand lotion? I recommend Rosemary Gladstar's book because she has a lot of things on lotions. One of the recipes I gave you, and if it embarrasses you men, I'm sorry, but one of the recipes I gave you was for a massage oil for fibrocystic breasts. Chickweed is one of the ingredients, but there's ingredients that are known to help with fibrocystic coat is in that one. So it's a start. You know, I want you to see that the potential here is huge. And you have the freedom to experiment. But do it safely, do it consciously, keep good records of what you're doing, because you are kind of experimenting. But don't be afraid to go home and jump into it, because everybody's, you know, the first thing is, oh my God, it was so exciting, but now I'm kind of afraid. Don't be afraid. You have my email address. You can email me. If you want my phone number, I'll give it to you. You can call me and say, I'm paranoid about this. Don't want to have a class and bring friends, call me, and we'll do it. If you want to do a private class, I'll do it. Anything to help you get started, because once you do, there's no turning back. I promise you. You'll be, people will come in and they'll say, oh, I have a headache, and you go, oh, here, take that. Rub this on your temples. Yes. The uses of mamu. Now, you're asking me about a plant I know very little about. I know that there's a tremendous amount of research being done on mamu. Do we have the handout on the herbs in the garden? Because that one, I can tell you, pick one up on the way out. Do we have any? Okay, it's in there about mamu. I have not personally used mamu, so I can't speak to you about that. I will next time, though, because I'm going home and I'm going to start investigating mamu. Anybody else have any questions?
pneumonia, bronchitis, tuberculosis, respiratory.
Respiratory, yes.
On the elderberry syrup that you make, the elderberries right now need to be picked.
Right.
You can make some for all winter.
Oh yeah, what I do with my elderberry, they'll tell you you can keep in the refrigerator for months. Trust me, you can keep in there a long time. If you use raw honey, because raw honey is a natural antibacterial antiviral. It will preserve it. What I do with mine is I make it in batches. I freeze it in jars this size, and I put it in my freezer. And I take it out as I need it so that it lasts longer. But I do a whole year's supply at one time. And the best thing in the world is to make your medicine while things are ripe and ready to use. And again, I believe it's because it's there for purpose. So use it, yes. Yes, I do strain the elderberries out. What I do with mine is I cook it down. I like warming herbs, so I add warming herbs. That's what it'll say on your recipe. I use cinnamon, cloves, and ginger because they are warming herbs, and because I learned from Rosemary Gladstar, if you make it taste good, people are so much more likely to take it. So I then put it in, when I strain it out, I press with the back of the spoon. I press those berries against this, and so all that nice good pulp comes out, and I scrape it off, and I press and press and press. And then I make my husband press and press and press, and then if my grandson's around, I make him do it. So yeah, it's a family affair, but it is something that when people, and I also believe there's something to adding your energy to what it is you're taking. And I think just like with cooking food, it makes it better. Yes?
On the cayenne cough remedy, it doesn't say anything where to put the 2 to 5 cloves of fresh garlic.
You throw it all in the blender.
Put it all together.
All in the blender. My husband objected to the vinegar, not the raw garlic. Yes?
About raw honey, the difference.
The difference between raw honey and regular, and this will be our last question. Okay. The difference between raw honey and other honey. Raw honey, this one has crystallized, but don't let that bother you because it's still good. Raw honey has all of its medicinal properties intact. It has not been heated. It has not been filtered. Well, this one's been filtered a little bit, but it has not been heated. When you heat it, you break down some of the medicinal properties of the honey. So the stuff you buy in the grocery store has been pasteurized.
Local people.
Oh, local people. You can get it. Where I found out resources was there's a beekeepers association that meets at the North Branch of the library in Cairncrook, the Lafayette Parish Library in Cairncrook. Those guys are great resources for unprocessed raw honey.
So the honey is buy from local people, that is raw honey.
No, not necessarily. If it's raw honey, it's not pasteurized honey. So when you buy it from a local person, you ask, is this pasteurized?
I think they actually have to label it. If it's not, it has to say local raw honey. If
It has to, the word raw,
that
it's
means
not, it's been pasteurized.
Honey.
Then chances are he's not processing it. All you have to do is,
Watched it.
well, if he's not processing it, then you have the honey, and that's what you want. I also buy unprocessed beeswax, which is darker than others, but I like it better. Yes?
I think I've seen labels that say not give raw honey to infants.
That's right.
Right. I would not give raw honey to infants, but, you know,
I think under the age, you don't want to.
it's under so many months, but there's some, you know, I wouldn't give anything to a child under 6 months of age, so.
There's a lady, a person who said that the woman wants to respond.
So it is more readily available now than any time in the past. So that should help. So I really appreciate, you've been a great audience, absolutely. And like I said, if you need anything, email me. I am helping you.